Thank you very much, Kajal. Super appreciate that. So just as a heads up, so yes, keeping the conversations that you have in your breakout groups kind of confidential. But you know what? The rest of it, all the stuff I say, tell everybody, shout it from the rooftops. You are encouraged to share all of the information that you'll be hearing today about social intelligence and incivility. We'll be talking about that. So last month's kickoff for this year's Conversation with Leaders series was great. So looking forward to today. So we're talking about social intelligence in this year's series because we know that working in the sector, seniors care sector today is really not so easy. There's, of course, increasing acuity for residents that has been happening for decades. Then, of course, there's funding challenges. And then, of course, there's labor shortages. None of this is new. It's all gotten harder, which has people feel tired and grumpy and overwhelmed. Not great, which can lead to, of course, all sorts of challenges, specifically around safety for your staff and also for the people that your staff are caring for. Yet some leaders, some organizations, they have these problems. And yet how they navigate these issues, it can be pretty inspiring. They are gracious, they are wise, they somehow are able to bring out the better in people. How do they do that? Well, a lot of it is social intelligence. So that's why that's what we're focusing on in this year's series. So last time we introduced the idea of social intelligence. Today, we're going to be zooming in on what happens when you don't have, when individuals, when teams collectively don't have so much social intelligence. A lot of it shows up as incivility. What can be helpful about making the connection between incivility and social intelligence is that it kind of turns this amorphous blob of incivility challenges into something that you can actually address and that you can support people to improve on their own so that it's not all on you as a leader. So that's what we're talking about. This is how we're going to be doing it, talking about what exactly is incivility, the connection between that and social intelligence and safety. And then most fun. You get to talk. We're going to be having the breakout groups. You'll be having discussions. It'll be great. All this is very exciting. And my hunch is that you were not sitting around eating bonbons before this, nor will you be doing that after this. You probably have lots on your mind. So we come to these things. Our bodies are here, minds, not so much. So we're going to do a little bit of an activity, just a short activity to see how we can do with bringing your mind and your body into the same place at the same time. So I'm going to ask you if you can put your feet flat on the floor, hands on your lap. This is that time when you're driving, you are mindful. Um, and you are welcome to be in a posture that has you feel both relaxed and alert. And you can close your eyes or cast your gaze downward. It's just so that you're not distracted visually. So there's nothing weird going on. And all we're going to do is take 3 diaphragmatic breaths. So what that means is in the first breath, just taking a deep breath in, making your tummy go big. Holding for a moment or 3, and then exhaling. And let's do that again. Taking another deep breath in, breathing all the way down to your toes, making your tummy go big. And holding for a moment or 4. And then again, long exhale. Hopefully the exhale is longer than your inhale. And let's do it one more time. Holding for a moment. And then nice long exhale. And then just letting your breath return to its natural rhythm and opening your eyes whenever the moment is right for you, returning to the room. Beautiful. So taking this kind of pause, it helps us connect to our social intelligence. It's kind of what we're going to be looking at. Specifically, though, today, we're looking at what happens when you don't have so much social intelligence, whether in the moment or whether it's kind of your baseline isn't so high. Remembering, though, that social intelligence is growable. So we're talking about incivility because they're very connected. And what exactly is incivility? Well, researchers and experts, Christine Porath and Christine Pearson, I call them the Christines, they define incivility as recurrent, rude, disrespectful behavior that violates mutual respect in the workplace. So it's employees' lack of regard for each other, whether it's between frontline workers, whether it's between leadership peers, it can be employee to manager or manager to employee. And it's different from bullying and harassment. So first of all, incivility is the majority of workplace aggression, so it happens way more than bullying and harassment. And incivility is verbal versus bullying, which is frequently more active, direct, overt physical behaviors. So incivility is those seemingly inconsequential but inconsiderate words and deeds where there's this unclear, kind of ambiguous intent to harm somebody. And examples, well, you probably know them if you've ever looked at SafeCare BC's Civility Matters Toolkit. So it's gossip, it's rumor mongering, it's social exclusion, it's ignoring or refusing requests for help, it's blaming others or criticizing them in front of others, sabotaging them. All sounds gross. And you might notice what's common amongst these examples is that incivility is really in the eye of the beholder. It's not an objective phenomenon. It's kind of passive, it's indirect, it's subtle, and it comes from really a person's interpretation about how actions make them feel. So it's kind of slippery. So, does incivility happen in seniors' care? Well, I'm going to assume that since you're here, that you're aware of incivility in your workplace and you're not alone. So, Dr. Heather Cook, she looked at incivility specifically in BC long term care in 2017. So, yes, she did find it does indeed happen. Bullying acts, turns out they were rare, but peer incivility was pervasive. And somebody in the survey actually said, it's almost daily from somebody somewhere. And I just want to point out that this was a study that Dr. Cook did in 2017. So if it was kind of persistent or pervasive then, I'm thinking in the past 7 years with global pandemics, it's probably gotten more. So these slippery, low intensity, rude behaviors, they're probably happening in your workplace. So for those of you working in nursing homes, think of them in your building or if you're in assisted living. And for those working in home care, think of it happening maybe in the homes of the people you serve, or maybe it's with coworkers or with supervisors that you're communicating with over text or over email or over phone. So incivility is the thing. Why do you think it happens though? Like really, why do you think it happens? So let's hear from you. We're going to do a poll and we're going to do it a little differently from our last session. We're using other polling software. So let me just get over to that. So it's Mentimeter. So if you can go to menti.com, you can open a new tab in your browser, or you can access it from your phone. You're going to go to menti.com and you're going to use this code 78931015. And this is a word cloud, and you have up to 3 entries. So why do you think incivility happens in your workplace? You can put in up to 25 characters. You can have a space between words. And as I said, you have 3 entries. So why do you think incivility is happening in your workplace? I just want to check. Can folks get in? Yep. Okay, good. We should be seeing the responses. I didn't test that you can actually put it in, but oh, there we go. Holding on to grudges. Oh, yes. Burnout, trauma. Yep. Lack of job control, lack of trust, poor communication, lack of leadership, overworked, jealousy, toxic, microaggressions. That's what they are. Entitlement, toxic environments, mental health challenges. Burnout is a big one, it seems like. Insecurity. Oh, these are really good. You folks are smart. Personality clashes, frustration, undertrained, overwhelmed, micromanagement, narcissists, right? Is it a personal thing? Poor communication again. Ethnicity, resentment, power, exhaustion, compassion fatigue. Yeah, you got it. That's it. I mean, really. So I mean, you're kind of onto something. Absolutely. So you're right. Incivility happens when people are stressed, when they are feeling all of those things that you were just talking about. And it's a vicious cycle. When we are stressed, when we are burned out, when we are feeling not so great, what happens? Well, we kind of zoom in on our own experience, right? We are totally unaware of what's happening around us. We lose sight of everybody around us. So then what happens? We're not so nice. We act in a not great way. Or what happens if we witness incivility? It stresses me out. And I mean, this is what happens. We know this from the research. I'm stressed out, and then what happens? Well, we also know from research that witnessing incivility reduces our problem solving skills. So yeah, you've absolutely got it. Or I am the recipient of what I perceive as incivility. So there's again, right, some low intensity, rude, disrespectful behavior. What happens then? So this happens here. And then I feel this is unfair. I have these negative feelings. So then I reciprocate. So this comes from research done by one of the Christines. And this reciprocity thing, it's one of the first principles that we talk about in the SCORE program. It's an intervention program that's been well researched. It's all about improving respect and civility. The idea that we teach them, that we teach folks, is about reciprocity. We give what we get. So in SCORE, we say that returning yuck, as in yuck, like an uncivil or rude behavior, if I return yuck with yuck, what does it lead to? It leads to stuck. So it's like the Gandhi quote, right? Everybody gets blind. So how does this fit with social intelligence? Well, let's just kind of do a quick refresher. So social intelligence is our social radar that helps us get stuff done in a social setting, right? It has these two parts. It has the cognitive part, our awareness, our social literacy, understanding our own and others' feelings, thoughts, and behaviors in these interpersonal situations. So it has that cognitive piece, and then it has the behavioral piece, the effective social action. I can act effectively on that information. I know how to promote and build meaningful relationships. So if that's what social intelligence is, and it's growable, and we all have, different amounts at different times, but let's say we have a baseline. Let's say we have a low social intelligence at the best of times. What does that mean? Well, it means that I misread, right? So I'm not so aware. We misread social cues. We don't recognize those subtle social signals that our behavior is inappropriate, that it's hurtful. We're just unaware. We just don't even know. So then we do more of those unintended acts of incivility. Not great. All right. Let's say also we are unaware of what's going on inside ourselves in interpersonal situations. It makes it kind of hard to regulate our emotions. So when I'm stressed out, what do? I lash out or I do these passive aggressive behaviors. So Heather Cook's research, she highlighted that people who feel powerless or devalued at work, they may engage in submissive, passive aggressive behaviors. And here's what's interesting. They do it towards peers versus people who hold the power, right? And so we did a pilot of SCORE in BC. And the reason we did it is that the leaders had noticed frontline staff were lovely with residents. They were lovely with residents' families, but with each other, not so much. It's exactly that. And then, all right, so social intelligence has the cognitive, the awareness part, and the behavioral part. What if, okay, I do have these moments of awareness, but I don't have the capacity for effective action? I don't know how to de-escalate. I don't know how to apologize or own up to when I made a mistake. There you go. Bing, bang, boom. It makes sense. It makes sense why there's going to be incivility. So that's kind of one set of reasons of why incivility is happening related to social intelligence. But there's another one, the spirals that we just talked about, kind of do another connection. Because even if we generally have higher social intelligence, in these moments of stress, our awareness, right? The awareness, our cognitive function, it's gone out the window, which makes it near impossible to do this effective action. There's one other connection. So I don't know if for folks that were here in the last conversation, we talked about neuroscientists' discovery that we are wired to connect. So there's this literal neural bridge between people through our mirror neurons and other neuroscience, which means that emotions are contagious. We catch strong emotions. So when people behave uncivilly or you witness incivility, or you feel like you are the victim of it, it spreads. This feedback loop that's like an interbrain circuit, it has us reflect back the uncivil behaviors. So imagine for a moment what happens when one person's rude behavior is tolerated and it's allowed to fester, right? It's going to infect the whole group, which is kind of gross. So there's at least three reasons related to social intelligence why incivility is happening. People have low social intelligence, so they're just clued out about the impact that they have. They don't know how to respond. And if you do have a high level of social intelligence, but if you are dealing with it, we know, right, our social intelligence declines. And then we have this neuroscience that has us hardwired to reciprocate, which is exactly what we saw in the poll, right? People, there's something that happens, I'm going to hold on to it, and off you go. So, how does all of that fit with safety? Well, Heather Cook, in her study, she found that incivility absolutely impacts safety of seniors care employees and of the people that they're caring for. So in work units with incivility, care workers, they don't request help. They don't receive help because people aren't going to be offering it. And they resist help from others, right? Because of, oh, if I let this person help me, all the bad things that are going to happen. That absolutely impacts safety of the people that the workers are serving. And it also impacts workers' well being mentally, for sure, right? We see that in tons of research in all sorts of sectors. So this is not just in healthcare and not just in seniors care. It also impacts their physical well being because people's work in seniors care is physically taxing. So if they are reluctant to provide or request assistance, for example, for lifts, you know that it's inevitable in terms of physical injury. So safety challenges. And all of this, it costs, and it costs a lot. So you can see all of this stuff on the Safe Care website. Research by the Christines found that employees, it decreases when people are either the victims, they perceive it as being a victim of incivility, or they witness it. These are all the things that go down. These are all the things that go up. People want to leave. They want to leave your organization. They want to leave the sector. And if they don't leave, then they're burned out, right? And it leads to illness related absence. So then what happens? This incivility, which comes from these causes or the low social intelligence, it costs the person, it costs their work group, it costs their supervisor, and it costs the people that you folks are serving. Not great. So let's just kind of take a look on where we're at in our agenda. So we've talked a little bit about incivility, why it happens, and how it fits with safety and social intelligence. So let's look at you. How frequently is incivility happening in your workplace? So we're going to go back to Menti. Here we go. So let's go. So how often? You can go back to menti.com using the code again, 78931015. How frequently is incivility happening in your workplace? Are you observing it or you're doing it, whichever? Is it once a month, once a day, once an hour? Is it happening just once a year? Let's just see. So we could see, right? So weekly, see at least once a week. So that's fascinating. Really? You only see incivility once a week? You know, like incivility is the rolling of the eyes. It's the people not offering help. It's, ignoring the call bell. Somebody asks for help and, oh, that's not my resident. It's people speaking a different language in the break room, even though you all say, if somebody's in the break room and they don't speak whichever, English is the language. So there you go. So we see it's happening at least once a day. And we have some great organizations where it's only happening like once a year. Yeah, you. Either way, we know that it is happening. So there it is. Incivility is happening and we know that it costs. So how can you address it? How can you address it in the short term? As in, okay, I've noticed it. We know that if we let it fester, that's not so great. So you need to have a feedback conversation and, using the basic elements of great feedback. You're going to be kind and caring, right? You're going to be direct, but you're going to be kind and you're going to be curious. You're going to be asking, like, what's going on? What drives the behavior? Was there something personal going on for the individual? Do they feel undervalued? Whatever it is. And that they need to correct the behavior. So this is one thing, right, that you need to do to address incivility. And of course, when you're having these conversations, you're going to use your social intelligence. You're going to breathe so that you are able to access your awareness. You're going to do a soft startup as opposed to, hey, I saw that. You're going to do a soft startup so the person can hear you. You're going to be mindful of flooding, theirs or yours, in terms of emotional. You're going to use I language. You're going to focus on the problem behavior, not the individual. Get your facts straight. You know all these things, right? It's just about being mindful in the moment when you're having the feedback. Except here's the thing. It's happening daily and you are having these feedback conversations, it can feel a little bit like whack-a-mole and that it's all on you, right? It happens here, you pop it down, it's going to pop up somebody where else. So how can you reduce incivility in the long term? How can you have a civil, a kind culture? So we saw this in the SCORE pilot, and SafeCare's Civility Matters toolkit is absolutely this. Education is pretty powerful. There's lots of research on it, including the SCORE program, which is, as they said, well researched. By educating folks on what civility is, what the problem behaviors are, what you're doing is you're telling them three things. One, you are proactively acknowledging that people are going to experience negative emotions. We're not always at our best, right? People are going to act poorly sometimes. There it is. It's part of being human. It's kind of what we do. And when you have the conversations and you acknowledge this, it's pretty remarkable. It's kind of like you're blinded by the light bulbs. People kind of like, oh, right. And it normalizes. Yeah, you're gonna feel poorly. You're gonna feel grumpy sometimes. There it is. Okay. How are you gonna behave? Right. By having these conversations, you're increasing vulnerability and trust amongst the folks, right? Amongst your work group. What does that do? You are increasing social intelligence. So education is pretty powerful. You're also telling people a couple of things. One, hey, I know that you can take charge of your social encounters. You are capable. So instead of it being on you, Mr. Ms. Leader, you're now letting people know, hey, you can take care of this. I know you can do it. You're there to support, of course. By educating, you're also letting people know they cannot let personal issues be more important than the work. So, yes, completely normal for you to feel grumpy. Absolutely. You can take charge of this and you can't act on that anger. Or if you do, you need to clean up. Right? It's again that caring and direct. So, education, number one. Another thing you can do is you can teach people about the platinum rule, the gold rule, right? And everybody thinks it's so great. Oh, treat other people as you want to be treated. Yeah, but incivility is in the eye of the beholder. So in the SCORE pilot we were doing, this became so apparent. People were practicing how to make difficult requests respectfully, right? Everybody practiced, right? And then we did a little bit of debrief. So one person, as they practiced, they did not look their person they were asking the request from, they didn't look them in the eye. And then they heard, the debrief of everybody else on how much they really appreciated being looked at in the eye. This person didn't know. And then they self-corrected, right? So you're teaching, oh, so that person might have been fine with not being looked at in the eye. They actually thought that that was respectful. No, the platinum rules treating other people as they want to be treated. Again, the education piece totally helps with that. And then the other piece is know that you as a leader, you're a catalyst for change. That emotional contagion thing, as a leader, you have a big impact. Absolutely. So if if you as a leader are not civil, people are not going to be civil. And you're not going to be perfect. So again, it's you modeling. How do you clean up your messes? All right. That's a lot of me talking. So let's talk about you. So we're going to be sending you into breakout groups, right? Kajal, you have that set up? She's so
Yes, I
good.
do.
Fantastic. So we're going to have one safe care person facilitating it, and they're going to be keeping the discussion on track and all that. The outcome that we're hoping for your conversations is that everybody in your group, you're going to individually identify one action that you want to experiment with to support you, your team's social intelligence, and addressing incivility. Final request before we send you off. the Vegas rule. So we know that when people can talk about what's happening with themselves, right, and feel comfortable and accepted doing so, that the speaker and the listeners gain more insight and value from the experience. So the request is that you hold what you hear from others in the breakout group as confidential, kind of like Vegas, right? What you hear in the breakout group stays in the breakout group. Can everybody agree? Anybody not? Okay, good. Excellent. So we're going to give you at least 15 minutes, but hopefully a little bit longer to go off. And these are the questions that you're going to be going over. Take a picture, but your facilitator will have them as well. So, Kajal, you ready? Off you
Yes,
go.
I am.
Okay, off you go, folks. We'll see you in a moment, or 3, or 15. And Kajal, you can stop the recording. That. Excellent. Welcome back, folks. How was the conversation? You're welcome to unmute
Thank you
and
guys
just
for
pop out.
sharing. It looks like we kind of have
Is it helpful? Kajal, if you want to mute yourself, that'd
Me
be great.
too.
Is it helpful to hear from others? Yes?
Yeah.
What's one thing that's helpful about it?
At least I know we are not the only one who have those. We're not the only one for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Did other people have that as well? It's like, oh, you have the eye roller too in your group? Oh, I didn't know that. Or, oh, you have the person. Oh, that's not my resident. They work in your place too. Ha! Did not know. Excellent. Well, welcome back. We actually want to hear from each of the groups. So I'm just going to let a safe care person jump in, and any one of you, and let's just kind of hear what are some examples, 2 examples. We'll hear from each group different examples of incivility in your workplace. So if somebody wants to get us started. All right, Lisa, thank you so much for being voluntold, being okay with that.
Me, Lisa?
That's it. Yes, you, Lisa.
Okay. So we talked about a few things. One that came up a couple times was speaking first language, even when there's an English only policy in the workplace. We also talked about senior employees who are working with new graduates or new employees that are not always treating them in the same way as they treat longer term employees. And then the third thing we talked about, which I thought was really interesting, was that some of the younger generations maybe are not so they're used to texting their friends. And when they get into Teams conversations, they might say things that are not really respectful of the fact that there's a large group of people on a call. So that I thought that was quite interesting. One of the people in my group actually works with students, so that's something they've been trying to reinforce, is be considerate of the fact that there's other people on that call.
Yeah. Fascinating. And what did you hear from your folks around what had they noticed that's worked or not worked to address incivility? So it sounds like addressing the behavior and asking folks to behave differently. And how has that worked, or what else have they tried that has worked and or not worked?
So some of them have mentioned performance management that has worked for short periods of time, but a lot of what's driving, particularly the language in the home issue, is that many of the workers are from the same cultural or social background, so they tend to slip back into those behaviors. Another thing that came up was using the S bar in communication so that people don't automatically start with the recommendation. They go through the process of what is considered good communication in healthcare, so that it doesn't just start with do this. This is what I'm telling you that should be done, right? So
nice, excellent, fantastic. Let's hear, Jen. You had your hand right up. Go. So let's hear 2 different examples of incivility that came up in your group.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Yeah, actually, thankfully, Lisa and I had very different conversations. So we really talked about denial being a barrier to change, which I thought was interesting. Some recognition that there's cultural preferences and language barriers, so maybe possible miscommunications unintentionally. One of the participants had suggested that while their focus is usually to to be direct and curious about incivility when they see it. Sometimes it's tricky because it will often be reported from workers that are working on an evening shift where there may be less management or senior staff there to support the process. And really what we thought about, or what we talked about addressing short-term and long-term ideas is recognizing the good work that people are doing, focusing on positive reinforcement, training and education for some self-awareness and definitions, focusing on education and policies. There's so much great stuff, but I'll leave the floor for other people to share.
That's fantastic. Those are great suggestions, though. Excellent. And let's hear from you, Liza. Liza, am I saying it right? Is it Liza? Do I say it, Liza?
Yes, slice is fine.
Thank you. Excellent. So let's hear two different examples if you have from your group around incivility.
Yes, two different examples. One is some of them have noticed that there is a persistent holding on to old grudges. And then when you
Yes.
hold on to them, they are interpreted negatively. That's one. And then talking down on other people, that's another one. So, and some of the things that they have tried to address it, what has been working is that working and not working, because it's a constant reminder. So the not working, it's constant and recurring reminder. Another thing that has been working is talking to managers. And they also suggested that another thing that they would want to experiment with is to learn more about each other's preferences. It can be in their regular staff meetings, in their huddles, or even in their potlucks.
Fantastic. That's a great one. Excellent. All right. And Ken, how about for you? A couple of examples that are different from what we've heard of incivility.
So no different examples, very similar. But one organization recently implemented a civility trainer in their organization. And I'll give a shameless plug for this. They were inspired to do this when they attended the Hearts and Hands conference because they had a session on workplace civility, and they were inspired to do something in their organization, and they have a civility trainer. And that person is actually a manager in the organization, so they didn't have to hire a new person. This person has gone for civility training and is part of their management team. While there is still like a lot of incivility that occurs, they said that the staff have been open to learning more about incivility, and the investment. While there is some investment for this organization, it's not as if they're bringing in an outside consultant all the time. It's somebody who works in the organization, and so they found that to be quite helpful. Another organization in my group, probably not unlike most people on this call, is just seeking some inspiration from other leaders to help them, because they're just feeling like they do a lot of things, but it's not helping.
Yeah, it's not sticking. Got it. Excellent. They're not alone. All right. Thanks for that. Salima.
Yeah, so our group had a great discussion. A lot of the examples were the same as what we've already heard, but I do want to share that there was someone in my group who's taken the Safe Care BC Civility Toolkit and customized a training program for their site, which she's been delivering now over the last couple of years, and she's actually noticed a shift in civility. So it used to be a huge problem, but she started to see it improve. And she thinks a lot of that is attributed to education and modeling from management on what good behavior looks like. And we also talked a lot about how not assuming that one approach is going to work for everyone. So being open to different approaches and different styles of education. And the other thing that came up that was really interesting was about adopting kind of a shared language across the organization. So at this particular organization, they use something called Q-tip, which is quit taking it personally. And it's part of the education. And what that does is it allows everyone to use that language when they see that behavior happening in practice, so that you can kind of let someone know that you're taking this personally. We learned that this isn't something that we should be doing. And then it kind of, allows that shared language to just be used across the organization. So I thought that was really good, and we really liked that. And we talked a lot about the platinum rule as well. We liked how we should be thinking about the platinum rule versus the golden rule.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. Excellent. And have we heard from everybody, Kajal? Is there any? Oh, here we go. Jamie, let's hear.
Hi, so our group had many of the same language was our biggest discussion, but we also talked about the fact you brought up, Mary Ellen, the safety side of things, where it's a safety risk, and just sharing with each other the why. So why are we speaking in a different language, but also why is that not okay? And they brought up that what really worked for them was peer to peer. So having a peer to share with them why that doesn't work for me. I'd feel unsafe. I don't know what's happening in this situation.
Oh,
And yeah, thank you.
That's fantastic. I love that because it's also the vulnerability piece, which it makes a difference. Absolutely. Anybody else that we have to hear from? Here we go. Mark, go.
A couple things that have been working for the people that I was talking with is, oh gosh, I had it here and then I must have scrolled away. Is facilitating conversations with staff that are having conflict, like a manager facilitating those conversations, so that they can have a space where that conflict can be managed appropriately. And then something else has been to like recognize positive behaviors when they see it, rather than always saying like, hey, that's bad. And people being like, oh, when's something bad going to come? But, recognize it, giving recognition to the behaviors that they want to be seeing.
That's fantastic. Beautiful. Excellent. And Sheila, welcome to Safe Care, and let's hear it.
Thank you. A couple points that haven't been covered from our group. We talked a lot about how subjective it can be, and sort of the importance of personal boundaries and understanding what those are and setting those for other people. And then we also talked about holding people accountable to expectations. And then one individual shared about the investment in team building and education around bullying and harassment and effective communication, and that has been effective in addressing some of the incivility.
Fantastic. These are great ideas, right? So good. And Namira, let's hear from your team. Any examples of incivility in your workplace that we have not heard about yet?
They're pretty much very similar, so I won't repeat what's already said, but one thing that wasn't said is that some workers, some people in our group were experiencing workers that weren't replying when either they were greeted in the morning saying like good morning or hi. And then some of the things that kind of worked for this has been like having feedback conversations and also like training and education on what type of behaviors are acceptable and non-acceptable. Sometimes it's working for like a short period of time. So then some things that have worked even more has been like disciplinary action and written warnings. But yeah, it was kind of a mix in my group. Sometimes the feedback conversations would work for a short period and sometimes they would just work well for long periods.
Yeah, fascinating. So what a kind of a common theme, I think we've heard from everybody. Is that right, Kajal? All the folks. Oh, excellent. So what I'm hearing is a common theme really is that education piece is good, that people are noticing that there's the short-term stuff and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't, which is kind of exhausting. And another piece was this idea of peers talking to each other. I mean, there were a whole bunch of ideas, but those are kind of the ones that are popping up. Fantastic. And don't worry, you didn't have to write them all down. We will make sure that we send out a follow-up email. You'll be getting it Monday morning, and it'll have a list of all of the things that came up. So you can gather, gain from all the insight of all the wise people here. All right. So if that's what you're doing, that's terrific. So let's talk about what's next. Safe Care can help in all sorts of ways because the idea is not to add onto your pile. They have tons of resources. So we heard a couple of examples. So there is the Civility Matters Toolkit. It fits with the education idea. It's great. And we heard that, right? We heard examples of somebody kind of customizing it. It unpacks what incivility is, how subtle and insidious and damaging it can be. And it also includes real life scenarios, which it sounds like maybe that's what somebody customized. I'm making that up. but real life scenarios for teams to talk about. Because again, it's just normalizing. It's like, oh, how do I do this? So that's one resource you can have. There's also the Care for Caregivers webinars that SafeCare has available. These are done in association with the Canadian Mental Health Association. There's recordings of past ones that they have done, and then they also do them ongoing, 1 or 2 a month. There's different topics, and they all kind of relate, or not all, but they often relate to workplace civility. Things like having difficult conversations, how to build meaningful relationships. Again, actually, it's incivility or civility it relates to, and also just the idea of building social intelligence. So Carissa Zargar is the lead on that. And then finally, there's the gentle persuasive approaches and violence prevention courses from SafeCare. So yes, this is about supporting delivery of care, can also really help peer relationships because it has a couple of things that they're about. One, how to approach people. And two, how to understand different perspectives. And then specifically, it has de-escalation strategies and self-settling techniques so that you can have these difficult conversations, so you can create more civil environments between employees, between peers, and also with the people you're caring for. So Kajal is the lead on that. So if you found value from today's conversation, there's a couple of things. One, there's the SafeCare BC Leaders Corner on LinkedIn that you can join. And two, there's also this terrific virtual connect session that SafeCare will be hosting next week on Wednesday, October 23rd from 1 to 2. There's going to be 2 SafeCare BC staff. They're key ones. So Kajal Haji Rocker, she's the education lead. You've seen Kajal, as well as Carissa Zargar. She's a communication specialist and she knows lots about the Care for Caregivers webinars. So Kajal will be dropping the link in the chat for you to join that session next week. And it's a casual space for conversation with leader participants to drop in, speak with safety experts about moving these ideas forward. So we're going to be doing it after every conversation with leaders session. Last month was bonus. So highly encourage you to attend. Here's the thing. We know that doing stuff is actually how things happen. So this is a slide that we always use in the SCORE program because if you're not going to do anything, nothing's going to change. So you need to do something. All very nice. We don't want to add to the list and you need to do something. So instead of putting in chat, we are going to do the Mentimeter one more time. What's one thing that you are committing to experiment with doing in the next month to address incivility? So this is a text thing. You can put in up to 200 characters. Super curious. What's one thing, just one thing that you're either taking from today or one thing that you will do that you want to experiment with? Just experiment, see how it works. That's going to support Q-tip, right? Oh, so good. Quit taking it personally. So I can tell you one of the reasons why that's really helpful is you now have a label. So instead, and if you've talked about it and you've normalized it, then it's like everybody gets it. Oh, Q-tip, there it is, right? So that's a great one. Go through the SafeCare resources, terrific. Name incivility intentionally, nice. Self-awareness assessment, excellent. Download the toolkit. Check-ins more frequently with team members, good. Education, absolutely. Communicating with staff intentionally, continuing to coach the team, yep. Again, because it doesn't have to be all on you. Go to Virtual Connect. Yeah, do that one. That's terrific. What else? What else are folks doing? Let's see. Anything else that's kind of popping up? We have a whole bunch of participants. Anything else? Oh, that's so good. Yes. If somebody's hurt my feelings, take them out for so talk one-on-one with them. And that's terrific. You can also encourage folks to be doing that. Wonderful. All right, let's see. Encourage more leaders to attend these. Yes, please do. The Q-tip thing, that is just so clever. So it normalizes it by having that label if you've already set the preface, and then people don't have to get all in a fuss, and it's just a short way to have that difficult conversation. That's one of the reasons why Q-tip is so successful. I'm imagining. That's what I'm making up. Where people are coming from. Yes, and guide by the gentle persuasive approaches stuff. Brilliant. Brilliant. All right. If you haven't written it down there, I'm sure just write it down for yourself because that's how change is going to happen. So here we go. So we're going to see you soon. Please attend next week's. Know that you are welcome to attend the BC Virtual Connect. next Wednesday. You also have the Safe Care Leaders Corner in LinkedIn that you are welcome to join and carry on the conversation. And we'll also see you next month. Our next conversation with leaders, Wednesday, November 20th, 11 to 12. We're going to be talking again about social intelligence and how it fits in with psychological safety. All right. So we'll see you. Oh, there is a survey for you to complete when you sign off here. It'll take you maybe 45 seconds. Would super appreciate you doing it because it gives us feedback. Be well. See ya. We'll talk soon.